Hello everyone, it is Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Thank you for joining me in my little corner of the internet where I talk all things planners, fountain pens, and fountain pen inks. And today, as you can see, I'm going to be talking about fountain pens, specifically the Jinhao 10 and the new-ish Jinhao 20. Now, if you're not familiar with the Jinhao 10, I'm going to post a link in the corner here for my video explaining this beautiful pen and why I like it so much. But in the recent weeks, I've discovered the Jinhao 20. Now, I actually have two more on the way just because the colorways are beautiful. They've got like this pearly white, so kind of like a translucent creamy white color with rose gold trim. And then they had this pearly pink with rose gold trim. So of course I had to get those as well. But before I even get those, I wanted to do a little bit of a size comparison, but also show you Vanessa Langton's trick for making sure that that door is well sealed using silicone grease. And then I wanted to do a test basically of how well these pens write after, if I leave them for 24 hours and 48 hours, and then do my little test at the end there. All right, so let's get started here. I say let's get started, but I've already been talking for like a good minute. Now, with the Jinhao 20, I was wondering what's the biggest difference with these, but when I received this in the mail, the difference is already quite obvious to me. The Jinhao 20 is actually narrower than the Jinhao 10. I'll bring you closer. So the Jinhao 20 is actually inspired by, I believe, the Vanishing Point Decimo. The Decimo is narrower and lighter than the Vanishing Point. Now, my Vanishing Point is, oh my gosh, where is my pen? Oh, there. My vanishing point. This is the vanishing point. So you can see the vanishing point is very similar in size to the Jinhao 10, but definitely wider than the Jinhao 20. Now, one of the things about these pens though is that the mechanisms are generally the same. You can actually swap the nib mechanism that's in the Jinhao 10 into the vanishing point and into the Jinhao 20 and vice versa. So that's actually one cool thing about these pens is that the mechanism inside with the spring allows you to interchange the nibs between them. So if you had maybe a vanishing point with an alloy but wanted to put it in a Jinhao body, you can do so, and vice versa. But you can see the differences definitely between the vanishing points and the Jinhao are things like the clips. Now you can see, I'm actually going to put the Jinhao 20 on the left here. You can see how the Jinhao 20, the clip is actually narrower than it is for the Jinhao 10, but the two Jinhao clips are definitely different in shape than the vanishing point. The vanishing point has a little bit of an indentation here where you would place your fingers. Some people find that uncomfortable, but then they find the Jinhao 10 and 20 without that indentation more comfortable than the Pilot vanishing point. For me, both are actually comfortable. So where I place my fingers on the vanishing point versus where I would place my fingers for the Jinhao 20. Like I can definitely feel the clip more on this one, but it's not uncomfortable by any means. And the widths of these two are very similar. So I find them actually equal in comfort. Whereas the Jinhao 20 is definitely lighter and I can feel that it is slightly narrower. Now, I don't actually have a vanishing point Decimo. I ended up selling mine because I found it too narrow for my hands, but I'm finding this is actually quite comfortable for me. So I'm looking forward to the other two pens that I've purchased in the different colorways to see. Now, you can purchase these on Amazon or AliExpress. I'm just looking these up. So on AliExpress, you can get the Jinhao 20 in this kind of, which one is this? I'm looking this up on my computer. This is the ivory white with the silver clip, but they do have other colors such as the pearl clear white with the gold clip, or the silver clip, or even the rose gold clip. And then they have the pearl clear pink with the gold clip, the silver clip, or the rose gold. And they vary in price, but the one that I'm looking at currently on AliExpress is $17.48 Canadian, which is down from the regular $25.33. So Yeah, actually a very good price for a retractable pen. Yes, these are heavily inspired by the Pilot Vanishing Point and the Pilot Vanishing Point Decimo. That's not a topic that I'm going to go into in this, but I really wanted to provide you with examples or a review of something that maybe out of some people's price range. And for the price of this, but also the build of this is actually really, really good quality. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out here is just in terms of the build and of the door, because with the Pilot Vanishing Point, the way that this is, I'll show you this, it's built very, very well. There's no, like, it's straight when it comes out. The door is perfectly aligned. It just looks beautiful. What I have noticed though with some of the Jinhao constructions is that the door is maybe not completely straight. You can tell that on the Jinhao 20 it's not completely straight on, but when it opens, I'm going to push these through, it looks like the door is maybe, yeah, you can see that there on the Jinhao 20 it's not completely straight, and then the Jinhao 10 it's okay, not as straight. But just little things like that. But to me, it doesn't actually make too much of a difference. The only reason that I noticed that is because of Doodlebud's videos. He's an excellent, excellent reviewer, and he's looked at these in great, great detail. But what I wanted to also show you is the fact that when you open these up, like I said, you've got the nib unit here that is interchangeable with a Pilot Vanishing Point, and then they have their extra fine and fine nibs, which are actually really, really good quality nibs. And then they have a converter in here that is definitely not like the Con 40. Well, I say not like, but it's definitely easier to use than the Con 40 that Pilot normally has. But you could also put a Pilot cartridge in here as well. And it actually comes with quite a few things. Now, I can't remember if the 20 came with a few things, but I know that my Jinhao 10 came with a few things like a little eyedropper and a cartridge, like an empty cartridge that you could fill with ink. So it's actually a really, really good value for the money that you're paying for it. And then now with some of the finishes that they're coming out with this, there's so many beautiful colors. And if you wanted to, you could certainly collect them all. And if you bought even, let's say, I was going to say, even if you bought like 10 of the Jinhao 20s, that would still be a little bit cheaper than buying one Pilot Vanishing Point. So good value for the money here. All right, so let's go ahead then. I wanted to show you the silicone grease trick that Vanessa Langton uses to be able to basically seal off some of the edges so that the mechanism seals better to prevent some of that evaporation and drying out, which seems to be the case for a lot, if not, well, I'll say a lot of Jinhao 10s. Now, I just had my little brush and I don't know where I put it. Hold on. So I have here some silicone grease, and I can't remember what this came with, but you can normally get silicone grease actually with your TWSBI Eco. They normally come with a little jar of silicone grease, but there's just, you don't really need a lot here. And I've got this like little cleaning brush tool, but you can certainly use a Q-tip and just put a little bit of it on the brush. Don't need a ton there. And then what I'm going to do is press with my pinky very lightly on the pen so that I can open up the door. And I want to put the brush really up against the door and try and get the silicone grease on the door as much as I can do. And I probably won't be able to get in there as much as I'd like without touching the nib. So I'd have to take the nib out and clean the nib so that I don't get a ton of silicone grease on it. All right. So then what I'm going to do is wipe off the excess there. So I'm not actually wiping it from the door, I'm just wiping it from the opening. And then I'm going to take this out and wipe the nib as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ink this up. And what I've heard from a lot of people is that Pilot inks do really, really well in the Jinhao. So I'm going to ink this up, and I'm also going to ink up my Jinhao 10. And then we'll do a quick writing sample, and then I'll leave both of these for 24 hours, try and write them with them again, and then leave these again for 48 hours and write with them again and see how we get on. There we go. So both pens are now inked up, and I've inked them up with Pilot Iroshizuku Syungyo. One thing I've noticed, actually, that maybe because I'm not an engineer and don't notice these things, but one thing I've noticed is the difference just in the build between the two. Notice where the band is on the Decimo versus where it is on the 20 versus the Jinhao 10. The Jinhao 10 doesn't seem to have a metal band around this part, whereas there is definitely the metal band around this part of the Jinhao 10. So I just found that interesting in terms of its construction. And then even the metal band here, in terms of the difference, to me it looks slightly narrower than the band on the Jinhao 10. So let's pull out my notebook and we'll go ahead and compare the writing samples with these. One thing I will show you is the difference in weight here. So the Jinhao 10, make sure my scale is actually turned on. So the Jinhao 10 is 34 grams, whereas the Jinhao 20 is 19 grams. So there's a huge difference in weight here. So for some people who find this too heavy, the Jinhao 20 is actually a lovely weight. Now, if I've got my Pilot vanishing point here, this one is going to be at 33 grams. So this is actually lighter than the Jinhao 10. Oh no, hold on. Okay, they're off by about a gram, but definitely the Jinhao 20 is the lighter of the three. So here I am in my Hobonichi A5 notebook with 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. I'm going to first do a writing sample with the Jinhao 10. All right, so here we have the Jinhao 10, and this is in the coffee gradient. And this has the extra fine nib, and it is inked with Pilot Iroshizuku Syungyo. Really, really, really smooth nib. And for an extra fine, I think it writes beautifully. Then we'll compare it to the Jinhao 20. Same ink. So this is the Jinhao 20 with also an extra fine nib. It almost feels like this one is slightly finer. And this is in the ivory white. Also inked with Pilot Iroshizuku. My writing. Syungyo. Yeah, it feels like it's slightly finer than the extra fine on the Jinhao 10, but still just as smooth. That feels lovely. So this, basically what's the time here? This is being written on November 11th at about 2:45 p.m. So let's leave this for 24 hours. I won't write with either of these for 24 hours, and then we'll see how my little silicone grease around the edges of the door helps to seal that, and then we'll test it again after 48 hours. So it's now time to do the writing test. It is November 12th at approximately 3:45, so a little over 24 hours. So this is the Jinhao 10 extra fine coffee gradient. Lucy's jumping up on me now. Flow actually seems poppy. I know. Feels good. Same as freshly inked. So let's do the figure eights. Yeah, looking really good. So then we'll try this with the Jinhao 20. And yeah, also good. Now, noticing some evaporation because the ink does look darker here, and the ink actually does look darker here as well. So the flow is good. So the flow is good, but some, gosh, I hate the paper not being flat. Here's some evaporation as ink is definitely darker than what's above. And then you can kind of see the real color start to come out the more that you write with it. But no hard starts, no completely drying out, just a slight evaporation, but we'll see. So it is November 12th at 3:45 p.m. The next time I'm going to do this is 2 days from now, so on Friday at about the same time. All right, it is 2 days later, and actually 2 days, so not 48 hours later, but 50 hours later, and I haven't touched either of these pens since the last time I wrote. So let's see whether there's any hard starts here. Okay, so no hard start. Seems to flow well here, but there is a little bit of evaporation because you can tell how dark it is. So I'm going to write it again, coffee gradient. So the flow is the same, but ink is a little darker. And now you're seeing a little bit more of the real ink. So it hasn't evaporated too bad. Normally it can take maybe a sentence or two to get it back to the, I say the real ink color rather than the super saturated evaporated color. Now let's look at the Jinhao 20. You can tell this one, I can tell this one is actually much darker, so it's evaporated a lot more. I mean, flow is still good. I really like how fine this is. Flow is good, but a lot more evaporation. You can see how much darker this ink is, but also like how you can't really see, it looks black rather than that purple. So it has evaporated a little bit more, even with the silicone grease around the edges. So maybe I need to add more silicone grease to this, or maybe it's just the way the Jinhao 20 is. But this is on November 14th at 5:45 p.m. So even with the, I guess, the silicone grease around it, there's still some evaporation, and I feel like there's more evaporation in the Jinhao 20, so maybe I just need to add more silicone grease in here. But with the coffee gradient, with the amount of silicone grease I put in, it doesn't look like, I'm gonna show this here, this doesn't look that much lighter than this, so the evaporation actually looks to be about the same for, you know, 24 hours not being used versus 48 hours, whereas in the Jinhao 20 it does look like there's been a lot more evaporation over the 48 hours versus 24 hours. So maybe again just need to add a little bit more silicone grease to the edges, and that might solve the issue. But that is my test really for the Jinhao 20 versus the Jinhao 10. I love that the Jinhao 10, and actually for anyone who loves the Pilot Vanishing Point Decimo, you now have an option for you have a cheaper option or a less expensive alternative, and you're able to have different colors as well. I should be receiving my 2 that I ordered off AliExpress hopefully sometime next week. But overall, I think it's a great pen for the price. Yes, there are some flow and evaporation issues, but they're not ones that are too much of a deal breaker for me. I haven't had hard starts with these, but there is some evaporation, and you can certainly fix that with the silicone grease that I showed you today. All right, so that is it for me. I'm hoping that this video was helpful, and I'll include a link to where I purchased the new colors of the Jinhao 20 on AliExpress. But let me know your thoughts on Jinhao 10, Jinhao 20. Are these good choices for you? Let me know. I think these are a great option for anyone who wants to try out the Vanishing Point or the Vanishing Point Decimo, but not wanting to spend that money right off the bat. So yeah, go ahead and give those a try. All right, that is it again for me. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. Otherwise, don't forget to hit that like button and to subscribe. Thanks again, and have yourselves a great day.